if you can start by kind of like telling me a little bit about like the translation process and obviously like the writing process as well, like where the book came from.
Yeah, so let me start with the writing process. So it's a book that took me around 4 years to kind of put together, but it's based on 20 years of anthropological research. So I kind of compile a lot of stuff over the years. But then at one point I was looking at all my notebooks for all these many years of work, and I was like, let me read through them one more time. Also, I write about that in the book, that I was in a moment in my life where I was like, let me look back a bit, like what have my work been, and what did I really discover about the women and people that I have followed. So that was the process of writing it, and it took me some time to kind of figure out like how should the form be, because I wanted it to be based on my work but also accessible to many readers, to sex workers themselves, migrant people themselves. I didn't want it to be like an academic book. I wanted it to be widely read, so it's kind of finding that form. And then the translation process, I decided for the first time to actually write in my mother tongue, Danish. Usually I do write in English myself. So like when I write for academia. So it was quite fulfilling to try to write it in my mother tongue. And then the work with Michael Favela, who translated the book, was really benefiting. And also, I mean, being very precise and close to the women's language.
Yeah, definitely.
And so no, I love that process.
Okay. And do you feel like obviously being able to write and speak various like different, because is it just English and Danish that you speak, or do you speak different languages?
I understand other languages, but these are definitely my two main languages.
Okay. How do you think that kind of played into you being able to understand different people's perspective, like as you're kind of traveling around the world, like being able to see, you know, because I think they say that people that speak different languages kind of have a very different brain. So like, do you think that that's affected it at all?
I mean, I definitely feel that it's important for all of us if we have a possibility to learn as many languages as we can. I mean, for many Danish people, it's quite common to speak Danish and English because we learn it so early. I don't know, maybe it's more part of being an anthropologist where you learn, you know, how to engage with different communities and being engaged with how other people think. I mean, the work of anthropologists, and I would say also authors, is to try to put yourself in other people's place and see the world through their eyes as good as you can, acknowledging that you can never fully be that other person.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm not sure it necessarily, in my case, has anything to do with languages, but more that it's something that I do in my work.
Yeah, just something that comes. So what I found really interesting and quite like powerful in your book as well is that right from the start, but also throughout, you very much recognize your own position, your own kind of privileges, saying that, you know, you can kind of cross borders without any issues, and you're directly working with people that can't, and you know, and what their reasonings are. So was that a very conscious choice, like kind of making sure that you recognized kind of your own privileges throughout, or did that just kind of come out as you were working with the women?
No, that's always been a huge discussion I had with myself, and I would say also within anthropology. I even had moments where I was like, I'm not the one who should be writing this book. They should write it myself. I mean, they should write it themselves, sorry. It should not be me doing that. I mean, people should write the books that needs to be written about their own lives. But then I also realized that that's also a quite privileged position to say that other people should write books about themselves when they are busy doing something else, like just basically living. And I actually have the privilege of being from a country where, you know, you go to school more than 4th grade or 7th grade. And then I took the time to talk with them about it, and they were like, but Sine, we're never going to write it. And then that was why it was important for me to both acknowledge what it means to come from a welfare state comparing to the countries where they're from, and also what it means. That's why I bring up these different points in my life where you can see the different the difference it makes where you're born. Like, for instance, if you get divorced as a woman or as a man, if you go through abortion, if you need that, or grief, diseases, things like that.
Yeah.
It really matters a lot where you're born. It's not just the same. So I was trying to kind of take these, to, you can say, recognize or show what it means to have privilege.
Yeah, definitely.
And to not have it in the most crucial moments in a human life.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because there was a lot of your own life being weaved through, which I think kind of made a lot of sense because you had to share your perspective as you were kind of talking to these women. So how did it kind of change your relationship with Europe and where you're from?
I mean, I definitely stay still very critical towards how Europe is treating many of the people that I work among, like sex workers and migrant people and refugees. Very critical, but also seeing and understanding why they would still want to come here.
Yeah.
The meaning of asylum, if you're from a country where you're being bombed, just sleeping safe at night.
Yeah.
Appreciating what it means to not being scared all the time or not having to think every day about whether you are going to be able to pay your rent, or, acknowledging the hope and choices that you have if you grow up in a society where you don't have to consider basic living every day.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that kind of also kind of comes from the privilege point of view, as in like that privilege is weaved into that a little bit as well.
I guess it's just the point that everyone should have those privileges.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That shouldn't be a negotiable thing,
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned choice a little bit there. So what's your perspective on free will? Because the idea of, women having a choice to go to this country, to go to Europe, for example, if the other option is kind of living in not great circumstances, as you kind of say. So what's your perspective on that?
I think it's just important for the people that I write about that it's never either or. It's never like free will or no will at all. It's always a continuum. Like at some points in life, you have more possibilities of choosing than others.
Yeah.
And also, even though you might only have like 3 limited choices on a very small stage, it's still important for the people that I write about and work among to be able to make that choices. They know they would have to go to Europe, or the family wants them to, but then still being the one saying, not with that man, but with that man, or in that way or not that way. Still having a little agency in your own life. So I don't believe in completely free will or no will at all, unless you're like under really slavery, exploited, trafficking conditions. But for the women I work among, it's always like a back and forth. Sometimes it's more free than others.
Yeah.
And also acknowledging that people, even though they have very limited possibilities, still wants to make choices and feel also that they did make some choices, not to take that agency away from them.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so like finding where choice kind of comes up in their life and where you can actually have options, as opposed to just thinking that it's one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And you mentioned right at the beginning is kind of about accessibility. You didn't want this to be an academic book. So you also do like film directing around the same subject area. So is that part of the whole accessibility thing? Like you just want to make the subject more available to people?
Definitely. Whether it's books or films, it's a huge part of my work to try and the stories that people tell and the circumstances that they live under to make it accessible outside of academia to broader audiences. That's really a huge part of my daily work.
Yeah. And so, because I think, I can't remember who it was right at the beginning of your book that you were talking about, that they wanted their children to be able to read this book and read the story and read their story. So
definitely, that's long. So definitely, one thing is why I'm doing it, but why the women decides, for instance, to not be anonymous in the book, which is something that many sex workers usually prefer, was that, they didn't want to be ashamed. They actually want their stories to be told and to be able to share it with their children. So Maya was more like, I want to tell my story to show that, how we are helping our parents back home. So everyone has an agency or not agency, agenda on why they want to participate.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the fact that they kind of waive their anonymity was really interesting, because you read books like this and, even if it's not this specific subject area, people tend to want to remain anonymous. So that was quite powerful, I thought.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy what you do, or do you feel like it's more of a kind of duty that you now feel like you have to fulfill it? Not that you don't necessarily enjoy it, but do you feel like it's more of a duty as opposed to an enjoyment?
No, I enjoy my work. I feel, again, very privileged to be able to have a job that I love, and to even have a job. I mean, not everyone is privileged to have that. And be able to meet the people that I meet. But I also do feel that the stories that they tell me through my work, I also feel that I should give back and respect them, and tell it to broader audiences, so they don't just tell it to me and then it doesn't go any further.
Yeah, because it's definitely something, their stories definitely needed to be widespread, and you've done that really well. Like, the book is extremely readable, it's a very accessible book. So in the book as well, you speak a lot about kind of women's role in their own exploitation. So was that quite difficult to write about, or like, how did you kind of navigate writing about that specific area?
I mean, I guess it's partly my interest in some of the things that are, I would say, a discussion or maybe unresolved in feminist thinking or feminist discussions, is that, we can all agree that, there's a patriarchy and, men's role in women's exploitation. But how do we really answer and reflect upon the situations where sometimes women exploit other women? Yeah. And that many of the traffickers in my situation, or in the cases that I followed, are actually other women who had been in the same situation. So, and also how that's one thing, that role kind of where the perpetrator and the perpetrated, kind of the boundaries sometimes can get blurred. So I was interested in that. And also how women in this situation sometimes get enrolled in, as you say, their own exploitation by agreeing to borrow money and sell sex, because they hope in 2 or 3 years their life will be easier. And then when society comes and say, but no, she was forced to do it, but then she's refusing that and saying, no, actually, I made the decision myself. So that kind of a friction or clash of the different experiences of that, and how it meant something for the women to be like, no, I made the decision myself. I knew it would end up in me being exploited or having a bad life for some years, but it was still me who did it. So that, I thought that was interesting to explore.
Yeah, I think you've spoken a little bit about like informed consent, and that's kind of what like that I suppose is kind of centering around, is how informed are the women about what is what the journey is that they're embarking on. So obviously, because the book is centered around sex, money, and love, like relationships, how has how has your view on kind of sex and relationships changed since doing this kind of job?
I mean, on the one hand, I definitely see, how for them selling sex is a job. They could have partners or boyfriends or lovers, but that's not someone they made money out of. So for them, it's really work, which is also why I use the terminology sex work, because that's where they earn money. So separating that. And then on the other hand, also seeing how complex and complicated that can be, because then they have a client, then they marry that client. And over the years, it turns into love. But it started being more kind of a money transaction. So again, this friction of like how love and sex work can also coexist at sometimes, and sometimes absolutely not. I mean, where it's really like you have 15 minutes and it's in a horrible place, in the basement somewhere, and the money is very few, and then how it's separated.
I was reading Why Women Have Better Sex Under Socialism, and 'cause I read that before your book, and I feel like they go perfectly together. But they were kind of saying that like sex and money are always intertwined in some way. So even if a woman gets married for what they think is love, it ends up being a bit of a transactional relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense. I mean, sometimes in some of the women I've interviewed and worked with, it's difficult to separate at some points where the sex work ends and the marriage starts.
Yeah.
And other times it's like completely separated. It's like, I have my husband over here, that's one thing. And then at night or in the weekends, I'm selling sex.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something completely. So it's just like exploring how all that is always intertwined.
I'm interested as well because you've spoken about previously, I think a little bit in this book, but also in various places, kind of more about how like sex work specifically is valued differently in different areas. So like if a woman was selling sex in Nigeria versus Europe, that's drastically different. So how do you think that allows women to kind of value themselves and value their own intimate relationships?
I mean, if you take it in the Nordic or Scandinavian or Northern European context, it's because in most cases, women, not so much anymore these years, they don't need to sell sex because of the welfare state or because, before it would be drug users, but now we have all kind of treatment opportunities. So then it becomes more kind of something they choose for a period in their life.
Yeah.
Whereas for the women in Nigeria and also areas in Thailand, it's more something that is sometimes the only opportunity to really change a family situation.
Yeah.
And so I feel on the one hand that it is looked down upon in a moral way, but accepted in the sense that sometimes people in those communities also know that that is what you have to do in order to take care of your family. So this balance between moral and obligation. But I mean, still, no matter what culture you're looking at, sex work is still so heavily stigmatized wherever you look.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it looked down upon as something that makes you a bad mother or a bad person even, or, that doesn't change whether you are in one or the other culture.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything you would change about the way that you researched or wrote the book?
Not for now, no. I mean, it's also quite new. So probably when I read it in 5 years, I would be like, why didn't I do that? Sometimes I feel I should have written a bit more about either the clients, the men's perspective, or the children of the sex workers.
Yeah.
What does it mean to have your mom away for many years of your life? But that's definitely something I would like to do at a later stage. Sometimes you also just have to make a decision and be like, let me focus on these 4 women and go in depth with that rather than being all over the place.
Yeah.
No, I'm quite happy with the way that the women and I worked together on this book and the portrait that we were able to create.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. And that would be a really interesting perspective, but I imagine there's a lot to it, so that could be a whole book in and of itself.
New book, yeah.
Is there anything that you wish you were asked more about your work?
That I asked more?
That you wish you were asked about, like, with your work.
Where I asked more?
Yeah.
Sometimes, I mean... But that's maybe, I mean, when people have read the book, they ask questions that I think are more interesting than maybe before they read the book. Before I wrote the book, it would often be like, so are sex workers happy or not? Or, like more simple questions. But when they have read the book, I often feel that they're like, oh, everything is a little bit more complicated. I actually feel that people want to have complicated talks.
Yeah.
When they have read the book, and I'm really happy that I, together with the women, were able to write a story about them where people could see that maybe it's a little bit more complicated than just being exploited, not exploited, a victim, not a victim, happy, not happy.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you.